So today we're going to talk about something that you may see every week at church but never realized was there. The intersection between disability and trauma. We're so glad you're here today. Looks like your class is enjoying playtime. Oh wait, why is your student so upset? Sometimes when students have a hard time at church, we may not always understand why they're struggling. And this can be especially true if a student has a disability that impacts communication. And even if we have a pretty good understanding about their disability, we don't always understand what they may have been through in their past that may impact their present, which is why, if we really want to help, we need to understand this. Disability and trauma frequently intersect. So sometimes it's not just the impact of a disability that is causing an issue, it's actually a trauma trigger that may not be so obvious. So the best way we can serve all of our students at church is to create environments that support both disability and trauma, supporting the intersection. Did you know that studies show that children who have intellectual or developmental disabilities have a much higher rate of experiencing trauma than children who don't have disabilities? Why do you think that would be? Well, did you know that communication barriers such as being nonverbal or minimally verbal may make it difficult to express needs and desires or tell others when abuse is going on? Or that some disabilities increase a child's dependency on others, which may make them more vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation. And what about the repeated medical procedures that many children with disabilities face? Those can be distressing too. And here's something else to realize. For some students, sensory differences, like those often experienced on the autism spectrum, make everyday things in the environment feel overwhelming and traumatic. And of course, there's just simply being different from everyone else that can put children at risk for isolation or even bullying. And yeah, that's definitely traumatizing. Turns out when it comes to disability and trauma, there is a lot to know, including this. When we learn more about it, we can help make things better. Today we're going to look at 3 common examples of disability and trauma and see how we can use the principles from trauma-informed care, safety, choice, collaboration, trustworthiness, and empowerment to create a more supportive environment. One trauma that is common to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities is feeling invisible. This can happen when people assume that a child who has a disability doesn't have things to share or can't be included. At church, this can look like someone talking to others about the student right in front of them, or making decisions for them without asking their opinion, or assuming that the student can't serve or be a leader. Dismissive actions like these may trigger difficult feelings in kids who have often been overlooked and underestimated. But this doesn't have to happen at church. Instead, start by finding a way to communicate. For some students, this may mean learning how and when they use their communication device.
Yes.
Or how to understand their unique nonverbal cues. Be sure to talk to them directly, and if it's helpful, speak slowly and give more time for the student to process things and answer you. You can also try offering choices through visual aids. This can be another great way to collaborate. And always remember that God has given each person unique gifts that can be used to strengthen the kingdom. So look for ways for each student to contribute to the class and even be a leader. Another trauma that people with developmental disabilities often face is feeling powerless when things happen to them beyond their control. Many times this can look like being a victim of crime or abuse. But there's another experience, one that we sometimes see at church, and although it's not intended to be distressing, it can also trigger feelings of powerlessness and trauma, and that's being restrained. Sometimes when students who have developmental disabilities have challenging behavior, adults physically restrain them in order to try to control the situation. And while safety should always come first, unless there is an imminent threat of danger to the student or someone else, do not restrain students. Being restrained can feel traumatic and can also be dangerous. So a better way to help your student and your class is to learn more ways of preventing and dealing with challenging behavior instead. A great place to start with this is by watching Wonderful Works Disability Inclusion and Challenging Behavior in the Classroom. Now, sometimes there are no trauma triggers present in the classroom, but things that normally don't cause an issue suddenly feel very hard for a child. This often is the case when a student has had something difficult happen to them before they came to church. So if you know that a student has had a recent trauma, be aware that things they normally can handle may be really hard now because they may be using most of their coping skills just to handle the traumatic event and all the changes in routine that come with it. Changes in routine can be particularly tough for students on the autism spectrum and may feel overwhelming just on their own. So if you know that a student is already dealing with stress, then the best way to support them is to reduce as many stressors in the classroom as you can, including reducing environmental stimuli and making things as predictable as possible. This will help create an environment that feels comforting and safe. Well, I think we learned a lot about disability and trauma today, but there's one more thing before you go. Did you know that although we can't prevent trauma from happening to our students before they come to church, the way that we treat them while they're there can either add to their trauma stories or add to their healing stories? What you do matters. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and share with others.